Why worry about using Dragon Hearts to heal when you could just siphon health from your enemies instead? Oh, and while you're at it, go ahead and enjoy doing a boatload of damage. I'm Livid, one half of the team behind Legion Gaming, and this is Rupture, my bleed build for Remnant from the Ashes, subject 2923. Before we begin, let's quickly go over the general style of this build, as well as the pros and cons of using it, so you know if it'll fit with your playstyle. Rupture rewards much more aggressive players. If you are someone who tends to sit back and keep your distance from threats, you likely won't find this build as effective for your playstyle. The Rupture build gives you the ability to apply an on-demand buff via your Dragon Hearts, meaning you can proc it when you need it most. On the flip side, this also means timing is key, and the resource is limited. This particular build focuses on heavily investing in bleed damage, using its persistent effect to constantly pump health into your character, allowing you to survive almost any attack while dealing an increased, constant stream of heavy damage, even on Apocalypse difficulty. Before we dive into the combat, let's take a look at the gear, starting with the trinkets. There are a number of choices you can go with for this free slot, as it's sort of a flex pick. My personal first choice here is the Razor Stone, a ring that makes your melee charge attacks apply a 600 damage bleed over 20 seconds. Now, this isn't a melee focused build, but this trinket will be extremely useful in maintaining that bleed tick when your other options become exhausted or you are dealing with larger groups of enemies at one time. Another option I like for this slot is Burden of the Warlord, since you for the most part will be up close with your weapons. The 50% reduction in the effective firearm range won't really matter. The bonus, however, of 15% extra damage from all sources means even your bleed is pretty worth it for this style of this build. Now, the ring for your second core ring slot here is not flexible. You will need the Bloodletter's insignia, which makes all bleeding effects applied by the wearer steal 10% of their damage dealt and return it to you as health. If you stack a ton of bleed, you're going to get a boatload of health back constantly. It's pretty straightforward. For our neck piece, we're going to use the Razor Wire Necklace, another item that you absolutely need. It will increase all bleeding damage dealt by a massive 50%. On top of that, all ranged and melee damage you deal to bleeding enemies gets amped by an additional 15%. Slowly, the pieces are all coming together. Now, we get to the armor. And let me tell you, this one actually takes some getting used to. As you can see, we are rocking a full 3-piece Warlord set. If your badass looks don't just straight up kill your enemies, the armor set's bonus definitely will. Death Wish completely disables your base healing effect. If you're used to spamming Dragon Hearts to heal, this is going to be a learning curve for sure. In place of consuming your Dragon Hearts for health, they will now increase your ranged and melee damage by a whopping 40%. And grant a 3.5% lifesteal effect on all your attacks during the buff's duration. Now you may think, hey, that's not bad of a trade-off. But the second con of the set makes it so during the 30-second buff duration, you will lose 200% of your health, with all kills healing you for a 5% of your max health over 3 seconds. So yeah, if you pop this buff, you better be able to keep your health sustained or you will literally die twice over. I've seen some people mention coupling this set with certain rings and necklaces like the Mender's Charm, Blood Font, etc. to negate the life drain effect, but that's not more damage. That doesn't fly here. So let's jump into the weapon setup so you can see for yourself what we're rocking. For our secondary slot, you can breathe a bit and use this as a flex pick for whatever your playstyle or situation really calls for. I will, however, give you my 3 recommendations here. First, and probably my favorite option, is to use the brand new machine pistol coupled with the Fan of Knives mod. This combination alone lets you handle hordes of enemies really effectively and doubles down on an insane amount of extra bleed damage. Our second choice keeps the machine pistol, but replaces the mod with Corrosive Aura. When we get to the primary slot and even the melee weapon, playing up close to your target will only benefit you with more damage. Play close to your targets, and you can result in lowering their defense by a whopping 30% when the stacks get up. And our last choice here is the Hive Cannon. Now this one was recommended to me by the community, This one is kind of iffy only because it has an ungodly slow reload speed for something you need to be using rapidly as your secondary. And the benefit of this weapon, however, is that the shots can actually apply the corrosive debuff at a much greater range. So pick your poison here, no pun intended. For our primary, long gun slot, this is where the build comes full circle. Our old friend the Devastator makes a triumphant return since the old school bandit armor days of melting bosses. The inherent weapon mod in this bad boy is Skewer, allowing you to fire a massive spike dealing 487.5 damage, an additional 300% stagger damage, and applies a massive 2,340 bleed over 20 seconds. Fire one of these shots into an enemy, and 2/3 of your Warlord debuff is completely negated passively, while dishing out a ton of damage. It's honestly insane. Last up is our melee weapon. Now fortunately here, you have just two options. You can go with Riven for the inherent lifesteal on the item, or you can go with, in my opinion, the better choice, the Scar of the Jungle God. You already look like an absolute unit with this armor, so why not just turn yourself into an animal at this point with these? The charge attacks on the Scar of the Jungle God grant a decently large bleed over 20 seconds, meaning you can use this a few times before your Devastator mod runs out and keep that passive lifesteal train going. Now, I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't show you all the ideal traits that you need to make this build sing. Vigor for that large health pool, Spirit for faster mod generation, Quick Hands to speed up that Devastator reload speed, Kingslayer for that big crit damage that we all love, Footwork because you're going to be aiming down sights a lot with this build, Tormentor to increase your bleed duration, which actually makes your Skewer bleed last almost the full duration of your Dragonheart debuff. It's pretty cool. Triage to massively increase your health gain from lifesteal, Glutton to use your Dragonhearts even faster, Catalyst to generate mod power from the bleed, Handling to compensate for your Devastator's recoil and spread, and sometimes the machine pistol, Concentration to make your mod's effect last longer, Demolitionist only if you're going with the Hive Cannon since it counts as explosion damage, Executioner for a higher crit chance, Mind's Eye for extra range damage, Trigger Happy to increase your fire rate on the machine pistol and even the Devastator, Exploiter for more weak spot damage, and Evocation to amp your mod-based bleed damage. Now obviously there are more traits, and the more you have in other things like stamina, regen, and whatnot, the better off you're going to be, but I found these to be the most essential. Overall, this build turned out to be extremely effective, and I hope at least one of you finds the build helpful. If you enjoyed this build, leave a like or a comment down below. Definitely helps us out. The footage following this build explanation will show you a couple of scenarios we put this build to use, so sit back and enjoy. Obviously, the best way to know if this build is for you is to just go ahead and test it yourself. Honestly, it's super enjoyable. I think you'll have a fun time. My name is Livid, and from everyone here at Legion Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.
We will feast on your eagles. Better than you have failed. A fight to take. There will be nothing left of you!
Whoa.